Hey, all, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Don't Wait Till Pigs Fly, a podcast for small business owners by small business owners to help them learn the tips and strategies to grow their business successfully to the next level. I am excited today to talk to our most recent guest, Jessie Ace, and she's the host of the Disabled to Enabled podcast. It's a podcast that aims to inspire people living with chronic illness. She's interviewed everyone from Paralympians, radio DJs, chronic illness bloggers, and marathon runners. She's also a blog writer and illustrator for the biggest MS charities worldwide, such as the National MS Society, the MS Society, Shift MS, MS UK, amongst others, and she's also written and illustrated for the biggest MS magazines such as Momentum Magazine, MS Matters, and New Pathways. Jessie was diagnosed with MS at 22 years old and says MS makes her feel blessed every day to be able to live a new life and to connect with so many amazing people. Her own experience of being diagnosed so young was negative and scary. She wants to change this for the other young people and support them through the process of being a patient advocate. That's fantastic, Jessie, and welcome so much to the call today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's amazing.
I am really excited to have you on the show and to talk to you about your experiences and your thoughts and strategies for, as we were saying just before we got online, neither one of us felt like working today.
No.
But we're both here and we're both going to have an amazing call today. And we need to realize that there are some times when just because we don't feel all right doesn't mean we can give in. And other times it's okay. So let's start out with that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. So I've kind of mastered this thing because sometimes, so having multiple sclerosis is really unpredictable. Sometimes you can wake up and feel like you ran 3 marathons in your sleep, and sometimes you can feel kind of okay, but it's never like, oh, I feel amazing today. So to counteract that, I schedule so much of what I do, and that has been an absolute blessing. So on the days that I don't feel like working, it's actually all scheduled ready, so actually if I don't feel like I can do it, then I can actually have that time and I can stop, which has been an absolute blessing. I cannot tell you how much of a blessing that is. You just got to be organized and on it on the days that you can be on it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, let's dig a little bit more into that, because I know for me that's a really big thing. If I have it on my calendar, I do it. It's sort of an accountability thing for me. And if it's there, I've made a commitment to somebody, whether it's just myself or whether it's you or someone else. And if it's there, I do it. And I think that scheduling and that putting it down is so important.
Oh, it so is. If I don't have anything scheduled for the next day, then I just fall to pieces when I wake up. There's no structure there or anything. And then my brain just goes to mush because it's like it's got no structure, it's got nothing to focus on. So having a calendar, however kind of daunting it looks when it's quite full, it actually is a lifesaver. And I even schedule in things like lunch and breakfast because I forget to take my tablets, so it's all in the calendar, so I get a little reminder every so often. It's like, oh, you need to do this. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Otherwise it's just completely forgotten.
What do you use as a calendar?
So I use Google Calendar, which is amazing because it doesn't matter what device you're on, you can still access it. So things like a paper diary and stuff for me was awful because I'd leave it in my bag, which was the other side of the room, and then I'd have to get up and use energy. And so if I can access my calendar from whatever device I'm using, from my phone or tablet or laptop, then it's just so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I use too. And another thing that helps me is that I've got everything color coded. So if it's if it's a doctor's appointment, it's one color. If it's a podcast, it's a different color.
Yeah.
So that I can just look at my calendar and go, "Oh, I see what's going on today."
Yes. And not only that, but how you can see how much time you're spending on each thing as well.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, I think.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, because as I said, I use Google Calendar as well, and I have 2 different laptops depending on where I'm sitting in my office or in my house.
Yeah.
I have a desktop. I have a tablet. I have 2 cell phones, because of different things that I'm doing and trying to keep myself organized. And Google Calendar works across all of them. I have my husband's schedule mixed in with all of that.
Yeah.
But if I also didn't have things that allowed me to automate that calendar, I would forget to put them in the calendar.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's even like setting things up for podcasts and things. So when I reach out to a guest, I'll send them a Calendly link. The Calendly link is integrated with Zoom, so that automatically books in that, and then that automatically sends out reminders to the guest, reminders to me, and it's just fabulous. I love it. I love automation.
Yeah, I do too, and I use Acuity, which is similar to Calendly, but it's so nice because it also sends out invoices. It does everything for me. And when somebody clicks on one of I have all these different links for all these things that I'm doing, and if it's a link where they have to pay me for something, it sends them out an invoice. It collects the money for me. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, and it's wonderful. And I don't think, unless you're using the free version of Calendly, I don't think it's that much more expensive than any others. I think I pay like $10 a month for it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And that's a really small price to pay for how much time and energy it saves. So
yeah, it does. What else do you automate? I know that was some of what we were going to talk about today, is getting all of this stuff automated. And why do we do it? How do you do it?
So I use Buffer a lot, which is a social media scheduling tool. So you can literally schedule all your posts in one go, and it will just send it out for you. It's amazing. It's so good. So there's that aspect. And then there's something else that I'm starting to do. So I've recently started on Patreon. So if you go to bit.ly/enabled hero, you can see my Patreon page. And I've basically got a $15 a month package that sends out a postcard with my illustration on every month. And it's like a handwritten note on the back. And that's all automated. Amazing.
That's very cool. I know about Patreon, but I didn't know that's what I know it's a way that you can actually monetize your podcast, but I didn't realize that's what it did. That's very cool. I'm going to have to check into that one.
Absolutely, yeah. So to set that up, I literally set up the tier on Patreon, and then that uses something called Zapier to integrate it into this thing called thanks.io. So it will collect all the details into a Google Sheet and then use that to go into thanks.io, and then they will automate the message on the postcard, and then they'll send out the postcard for me. So I literally don't have to do anything.
That's fantastic. And I was just going to ask you if you'd ever heard of either, I think it's IFFFT, or the one you just mentioned, which it's gone right out of my head right now, the name of. But those are 2 wonderful ways of automating things. Let's talk about them a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll have to look into those ones. They sound good.
What is the one that you just mentioned? It went right out of my head.
So it's something called thanks.io.
No, Zapier is what I was thinking of. Yeah.
That literally can link any program to any program, so it's really cool. So I use messenger bots a lot as well, on Facebook primarily. I'm starting to use Instagram a little bit, but on Facebook Messenger you can literally use a messenger bot that can integrate that with so many different things. It's amazing. So you can do like a quiz through Facebook Messenger, and then towards the end you can link it to a Google Sheet where it'll collect all their email addresses and phone numbers and things. You can then link that to a voicemail drop system where it will send out an automatic voicemail to them. There's just so much you can do. Really.
Are these things difficult? Because I know for me, and I love tinkering, and I love finding new bits and pieces of, tools and things. I am a geek, but I'm not, my nervous system is like right there vibrating. And if I can't figure something out, the computer is likely to go flying across the room. And so I don't use a lot of this stuff, even though I know how wonderful it is, because I can't figure it out.
Yeah, totally. I totally get that. And I'm not an expert, I'll put that out there. The way that I know how to do this is because my husband is, he calls himself the messenger bot guy. So he runs a business around messenger bots. So so I've done a little bit of work for him, and he's taught me how to do a few things and things. But his knowledge goes far beyond mine. It really does. So whenever there's a problem, I'm like, Paul, can you come and help me? It's broken again.
I love it. I've actually got a ManyChat site, and I've never been able to create a bot ever. And so I just sort of went, go away. I don't even want to think of you, go away. But I would love to have one.
I'll help you out with that, no worries.
All right, that sounds great. That sounds great, because I think it's so important. And this is a conversation that any business person should be having, is what can we do to, as we get busier in business, what can we do to create an environment where things are done the same every time? They're done so that if we have to be away for something, it still is going to get done and we don't have to worry about it. So it's important to understand all these technologies, just as a business person in general. But I think when we start to look at it from the standpoint of someone who has MS, or I have fibro and I have something called complex regional pain syndrome, and we have difficulties on top of the things that just anybody running a business would have.
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, just jump in anywhere. I've lost track already. See, my brain. Why is it so important for someone that has a chronic illness to have all of these technologies and strategies?
I think it's really important to push yourself to learn new things constantly anyway. And I think it's a really wise idea for anybody that has a business, not just if you have chronic illness, but anybody. If you're doing something in your business, then I think it's always a really good idea to think about what you would do if you were to pass that on to somebody else. So every system that you create, you're creating it as if somebody else can do it. So that way you're building something that's bigger than yourself, and you're building something that you're able to then sell, and maybe possibly in the future, or you're possibly able to outsource everything, leaving your time much freer.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's and I'm sure there are lots of other pieces of technology can do this too, but I found a program that I use for a lot of things, which goes along with what you're talking about, where you can actually train and create other people so that they understand what's going on. So if you're not around, they can do it. And it's a video program called Loom. It's not Zoom like what you're using now, but it's called Loom. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, you can record your screen and things, can't you?
Yeah,
Really
it's
good.
I do it to train people on different things. I had some clients that were trying to figure out how to unfriend people on Facebook,
Okay.
and they could not figure it out. So I just hopped on Loom. I opened up my Facebook page, and I did step by step showing them visually
Mm.
how to do it. And they were then so thankful because they were able to figure it out. And I think if we can create these handbooks or these guidelines that will allow us to say, this is what I do, this is how it's set up, this is the
Mhm.
Zapier for it, this is my calendar,
Exactly.
and somebody else can go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because I know for me, I don't know what I would do without my assistant. I have an absolutely marvelous assistant that I've worked with for a couple of years now. And she does all of this back office stuff for me. And all of a sudden, I'll get a message saying, you need to do this. It hasn't been done, and all these things. So she knows as much about my business, if not more, than I do. And a lot of it is because I was able to train her properly in the first place. Do you have anyone that works with you?
Currently, no. Currently, it's just me.
Yeah.
So
Um,
yeah,
yeah, because
I just rely
I think
on
that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I rely on scheduling at the minute.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, she sets up my robots, she sets up my Zapier, she sets up all of these behind the scene things, and that just, if I have somebody that I can rely on who can take over for me,
Yeah.
and do those things, it just makes me relax. It's a form of joint venture partnering because she's not my employee.
Mm.
She does work for a lot of other people as well, but she's there and I can rely on her, and I know that I can get things done when I need to have things done. We were going to talk a little bit about partnerships and those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit for me.
Well, I think that's one of the most important things in any business is a strategic partnership. And I was thinking about how I actually got started in the whole kind of started with the whole blogging thing and illustrating thing, and it actually stemmed from one partnership, the very very first one that I did. So when I first decided that I'd finally accepted my illness, it was about 4 5 years after it actually happened. And I thought, okay, I want to change the lives of other people that are like me, that are diagnosed young, that have probably had the same awful diagnosis story that I had. So I was like, well, how am I going to do that? And I thought, well, the biggest company that I can think of is the National MS Society in America. So I thought, okay, what? And then I thought, what could I do for them? So I looked on their website, found that they had a blog, and I was like, oh, I could maybe write for them, which was great. And then it literally took about 3 months of persistent emailing to even get a call with them. It took forever. But then after that, I finally got a contract with them to be a blog writer. And then as soon as I told every other company that I was working with them, then they were like, oh, that's a really big company. So yeah, well, sure, we'll work with you. That's fine. And then it just kind of builds up from there. So the editor for the Momentum magazine, which is one in America, she saw my blogs online on the National MS Society page, and she said, I want some illustrations for the magazine. So I was like, great, okay. And then that turned into an article for the magazine, and that turned into another article for the magazine, and then that turned into an article in England for a magazine. So it snowballs. As soon as you get in with the biggest people that you can, the biggest influencers that you can, it just snowballs everything else. It really does.
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of it is just having the patience to wait it out.
oh, totally, yeah. It's the same with podcasting as well, trying to find, the biggest guests that you can and things, and using so you can utilize their sort of network and leverage and that sort of thing.
Yeah. There's so much that we can learn and that we can do to grow our businesses. If you were looking for clients, what would you be looking for?
Clients in what aspect? Because I've got a lot of different channels going on at the minute.
Okay. Well, that's good. How do you make your money?
Mostly blog writing and illustrating at the moment. Okay. So I would reach out to the biggest magazines that I could find, and I would share my story, and I would say, look, I'd like to give this to your audience. Would that be something that you're interested in? And I think the magical line of anything, if you're going to reach out to somebody to try and get a result, the magical line to say is, what's the magical line to say? It's come out of my head.
I understand that very well.
This is what MS does. Like, it just wipes my brain clean. So the magical line is, would it be unreasonable to consider XYZ? Would it be unreasonable to consider us working together, basically? Okay. So you basically look for a no answer.
Yeah. That's jumping around. I'm real good at jumping around too with things. And I have had, in one way or another, I have had what used to be called reflex sympathetic dystrophy, now is called complex regional pain syndrome. It's not bad enough that you have all the pain and everything. You have to remember all these new names all the time.
Remember your new labels as well.
I tell you. But it was probably 2 years before they finally came up with the decision that that's what I had. They thought I had MS. They thought I had lupus. They thought it was, Lyme disease. You go through all of these different tests and doctors and everything under the sun. And it's just one of the most frustrating, discouraging, depressing journeys that you can possibly imagine. I really wouldn't change it now, because I almost see it as a blessing, because I would not be where I am today if I hadn't gone through all of that. But exactly. I was 30, so I wasn't that much older than you when they first. I got hit by a bus in downtown Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
And that's what started the whole thing, but it took, I was in a cast for 6 months. I was this, I was that, I was the other thing, So talk to us a little bit. We're going off of the subject of business per se, but talk to us about what it was like to be diagnosed, what it was like in those first few years of knowing that there's something not quite right.
Well, it's a really interesting story, really, because I was a perfectly healthy person one day, and then I woke up the next day with the left side of my body completely paralyzed. And I was like, what? And it was literally on the last day of university. So I'd done 3 years of all this work, and I'd set up a business in my second year so that I'd have something to go into on my third year. So I had an agent set up. I had a book deal for when I left. I had products in stores all around the country. Everything was ready for when I left uni. I just had to leave uni. And that last day I woke up and I had a paralyzed left side. And I was like, oh my God. So those last 3 years were for nothing, pretty much. And I didn't know who I was anymore, because I thought, well, art and design is the only thing that I've ever really known. And illustration was the thing that I really wanted to go into. And a few weeks after having the left side paralyzed, my right hand also went paralyzed as well. So I literally had 2 hands that didn't work. I'd had a degree that's now amounted to nothing. And I was like, what the heck? Like, what is this all about? It's ridiculous. So me being me, woke up with a paralyzed left side, and I decided to wait a week before going to the doctor, because I thought, it'd be a trapped nerve or something. It'll be fine. Because, when you're 22, you're like young and invincible and like, nothing can touch me. I'm fine. Yep. Yeah, no, it didn't really work that way. So
Not so much.
not great. So the doctor originally thought I had something called a hemiplegic migraine, which I didn't know what it was, if I was honest. It was basically like a localized weakness in the body or something. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'd never had a migraine, so I couldn't compare it to anything else. I had no idea. And it wasn't until I got home that she actually rang me back and she said, actually, I've just been speaking with my colleague and she said that you could have had a stroke, so you should really go to A&E. And I was like, oh my God, a stroke at 22? Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. But then I kind of thought, well, at least if it's a stroke, then it's over and done with. And, I'll just kind of have to learn to live with this. It's a bit weird, but I'll just kind of make the best of it. It'll be fine. And then I got sent to A&E and I had every test under the sun, tests that I'd only ever seen in Grey's Anatomy, which was my favourite show at the time. I love Grey's Anatomy. So, yeah. And I came out 3 days later with my diagnosis. And I remember that day so clearly. So the doctor came in to the stroke ward that I was on. I was surrounded by these 80-year-old ladies that were shouting and screaming because they'd all got like dementia and Alzheimer's. It's the first time I'd ever been in hospital, so that was fun. My one saviour was the guy with the tea trolley that came around every few hours. He came around with tea and cake, and that was like the best part of the whole thing.
This is definitely a hospital not in the United States. I never got tea.
This is an English hospital. We have tea and cakes brought around every few hours.
Man, if I get sick again, I want to get sick in England.
We do, because the NHS is amazing. So this doctor came in anyway, sat on the end of my bed, kind of pulled the curtain around my bed and was like, look, so I think we know what it is, kind of thing. There's just one more test that we want to do. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, what's that then? And he was like, so it's this thing called multiple sclerosis. And I was like, okay, and what's that exactly? I had no idea. I'd never heard of it before. The thing that came to my mind instantly was a wheelchair, and I instantly thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. This is awful. And I actually realised now that I got it confused with cystic fibrosis, where a person only lives till about 35, like normally. So I was like, oh my God, I'm possibly going to be in a wheelchair. I've got 10 years left to live. I was perfectly healthy yesterday. What the hell is going on? Oh my God, my life's over. And he literally said to me, the best thing to do now is to go home and Google it in your own time and find out more information about it on your own. And I thought it was perfectly normal at the time, but everybody that I've told since is like, no, they should not say that to you. They should give you pamphlets and leaflets and all of this. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, they didn't give me anything. So I was literally healthy 1 minute and then diagnosed with a degenerative condition the next minute with no information whatsoever. And I then had a 4-month wait between then and when I first met my neurologist. So that was an incredibly scary 4 months, and I went into severe depression. I didn't even leave the house because I was too scared to go outside. I didn't talk to anybody. My friends stopped talking to me. I lost the book deal. I lost the agent that was wanted to represent me. My work got pulled out of all the shops because I had no hands. I couldn't use my hands anymore. So I was like, oh my God, what do I do? So yeah, I went into quite severe depression on that one.
Well, and I understand, because I mean it sounds really like we were on a similar journey. Really? Except when I got all of this, the doctors had not, for the most part, the doctors had not even heard of RSD. They did not know what it was. I was told more than once that people that had this problem were given frontal lobotomies because there was nothing really wrong with them. All the tests would all come back negative. They couldn't figure out, so you're either making it up or you're sick in the head, and to get you well, we just have to give you a frontal lobotomy. Scary. And I couldn't Google it because, first of all, there was no such thing as Google back then. And since the doctors didn't even know what it was, there was nothing written about it. And the same was true. I got fibro a year after I got the RSD. So I'm probably one of the longest living people that have these, problems. And, nobody knows. At that time, nobody knows what they are. And I just recently joined a couple of groups on Facebook that are for fibro and RSD. And the doctors are still just, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we don't know what to do. And I am now in a wheelchair. I can't go anywhere without my husband pushing me. And, and so our stories are similar, but you can't and for a while I sat there and I was depressed. I didn't leave the house. I didn't anything. And I just thought, I just want to die. I don't want to live like this. But you can't do that. You have to get up and keep going, and you have to make something of your life. And obviously you did too. Do you have use of your hands back now?
Yes. Yeah, they came back about 6 months later. So
fantastic.
It took a long time, but thank God that they did in the end.
Yeah, because I know 2 years ago, Christmas Eve, I was getting out of the shower and my bad leg gave out on me, and I went blump down on the ground and landed on my, how you land and your wrists are bent, and I landed on my hands and knees, and immediately my whole right arm just went numb and all these kinds of things. And it was 9:00 in the morning. I didn't go to the emergency room until 9:00 that night. And the emergency room says, "Oh, you didn't even sprain it. There's nothing wrong." It took them 3 weeks to figure out I had broken bones. And so I can't. Yeah, and I tore my rotator cuff at the same time. So I have very little use of my right arm. So I understand again what you're talking about. For a long time, I had to figure out how to use Dragon. Do you know Dragon software?
No, I've not used that.
Dragon is a piece of software. It's a transcription software, and you talk into it, and the computer types for you. And
that's cool.
It's amazing. It works really well. Although now Microsoft has it in their Word package, and Google has it as well. And they really work well. You still have to go in and do some editing with it, but it for somebody who has very little use, you gotta fly. For somebody who has very little use of their arm, and their fingers and their hands, this software is an amazing piece of technology.
Oh, that sounds great. I need to try that.
Yeah, it's called Dragon. Dragon. It's a wonderful piece of software. I love it. So, well, what have we not talked about that you would like to share with the world?
Oh, what a question. What a question indeed. Gosh. So what have we talked about already? So we've talked about business a little bit, automations, diagnosis.
Yeah, we've talked about partnerships. We've talked about scheduling and keeping on track with things. I think we've covered a lot.
We have covered a lot, yeah. I mean, there's only one real rant that I've got in me if you're interested.
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
So, right, okay. It really drives me crazy that the whole disabled thing, the whole disabled icon is a wheelchair. That really, really bugs me. You may or may not feel the same. But when I was first diagnosed with MS, and my MS nurse who I met for the first time was like, "Oh, you've now got like disability rights, they apply to you," and all of this sort of stuff. And you've got to tell your employer because blah, 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 blah. And you're now disabled. You can get a disabled badge and all of this. And I was like, whoa. I'm not disabled. Like, I'm perfectly able. Like, I was fine. Like, I can't really use my hand, but like, that's fine. I'm totally fine. Mm-hmm. So I have a real issue being labelled with the whole disabled thing. Hence my podcast, Disabled to Enabled. because that's kind of how I went. I went from being disabled to enabled. But the thing that I have a real issue with is the icon of the wheelchair. So whenever I use my blue badge permit, for example, in car parks or whatever, and I use it and I get out of the car and I walk away, people who don't know anything about chronic illness are like, oh my god, why are you using your blue badge when you can walk? You're supposed to be in a wheelchair. There's a picture of the wheelchair on the space. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. It really, really bugs me. So I've currently partnered with the MS Society and an MP from Scotland who is we've created this alternative symbol that we want to use for on everything, basically. And it was really funny because I rang up the Department of Work and Transport the other day and I said, yo, why is there I didn't actually say yo, I was a bit more professional, but like, just, sound cool. Yo, why are you using a wheelchair for a disabled icon when actually 76% of people with disabilities don't use a wheelchair? This is the thing. And they said, well, blah, 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 and gave me some poor excuses and things. And I said, that's not good enough. Because you need to be inclusive of all, abilities. It's not just one set of people that you should be catering for. And there is so much discrimination and prejudice that people like me face who have invisible illnesses, who by the general public are just getting constantly, shouted at essentially in car parks. It's ridiculous. So yeah, and they basically told me that because we're leaving the EU, we don't actually have a leg to stand on at the moment. So I was like, great, okay. So they pretty much said, well, that's how it is, and that's how it's going to stay. And I was like, yeah, no, it's not. Not if I have anything to do with it. So yeah.
Well, sign me up as an advocate for that, because I have my own story on that one too. I had been shopping in a big mall outside of Washington, D.C., where we used to live. And I had gotten back to my car. I was parked in a handicap spot. I had my handicap tags. And I'm, breathing hard, trying to catch my breath. And I just sort of sat back and closed my eyes to get myself oriented again. And here's this bang, bang, bang on my car window. And I kind of woke up and rolled the window down, and this woman sticks her head in the car and she's literally nose to nose with me.
Oh my God.
Screaming her head off at me at how dare I park in a handicapped parking spot.
Ugh. That's so rude.
And back then I wasn't in a wheelchair. I didn't even have a cane. I just was, having a lot of issues. And I'm going, and she just wouldn't even let me get a word in edgewise, and then ramps around and goes stomping off to the mall. And it was because there weren't any other parking places anywhere around, and she was upset because she had to walk. So I understand exactly what you're talking about, is that it's crazy that people, and I think that actually leads into a whole nother consideration that so many of us, unless you are in a wheelchair or something like that, we don't show as having anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's like all my symptoms are kind of internal.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It's really hard to explain to anybody else that doesn't understand.
Yeah, I'm not blind. I don't have my walking, my white cane. I don't have that, so people can't see that I'm not blind. They cannot tell that I am just in horrible, horrible pain 99.9% of the time. And people can be really uncool, with the way they treat other people.
Totally.
It's sad.
And I think it's hard as well, because I do see it from their point of view, because at the end of the day, they would see a normal 28-year-old woman, looks perfectly fine, looks perfectly normal, and obviously I'm abusing the system. you know, and I kind of get it from their point of view. They're trying to look out for people with disabilities and handicaps and things or whatever. And, you know, I kind of think, yeah, that's great, but I think there needs to be more education for the general public on invisible illnesses and chronic illnesses, and just more stuff like that. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I think it's time, and hopefully this show will start that knowledge going out there, and that we can eventually get that education going. Yes. And let people realize that we're not, like you said, we're not disabled, we're enabled, we're other-abled. I've heard a lot of different words, but I can still do almost everything. I just have to do it another way.
Yeah, you just have to sleep every half an hour.
That's right. Speaking of, I'm going to go take a nap now. So thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been fun. It's been educational. It's really, I'm going to talk to you offline about your husband and bots, and we will get this going, and lots of people will learn from it. Thanks, guys, for listening today. This was a bit of a different show, but it's gonna be more along these lines from now on. So if you have comments, if you have thoughts, share this podcast with others. It appears on Thursday evenings at 5 p.m. Eastern at www.don'twaittillpigsfly.com, and we would love to have you download it, subscribe to it, send us ideas for future chats, and we will talk to you again soon. Until we do talk again, be productive, get out there, and soar higher. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.